Welcome to the Data Architecture Elevator podcast. Created by Agile Lab, we will explore the dynamic intersection of technology, innovation, and practices in the data space. Our company purpose is to elevate the data management game of companies that want to be data-driven, and this is the goal of this podcast too. For more information and insights, visit our website at www.agilelab.it and feel free to reach out our architects on LinkedIn with your question. Now let's step into the elevator with Agile Lab data architects.
Hello, welcome to a new episode of Data Architecture Elevator. In this episode, we will focus on data reliability, consistency, accountability through data contracts. It's a hot topic. And we will cover this item with our guest, so Antonio Murgia, data architect.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
And our engineering manager, Ugo Ciraci.
Hi, everyone.
Good. So there is a lot of discussion about data contracts in the industry right now. So maybe let's start, Antonio. Maybe Hugo, you can start talking about what are data contracts, in your opinion.
Well, we should put data contracts in a space, in an environment where we see data consumers and data producers who wants to actually provide. Consumer want to consume it, and data producer wants to provide data with a certain reliability and consistency. A data contract is, in the end, a manifest or a declaration of data producers about what they want to guarantee to data consumers. And you can figure this out like an artifact, that is public for data consumers, that they can consult, they can look at, check what they should expect from a certain data asset, something that we want to get value from, and they can decide to consume it or not, depending on the guarantees and the value that these data assets can actually deliver. So, in terms of responsibility, we talk about data contracts, but probably is more data producers that has a responsibility in what they deliver. So they have a responsibility to show up in a data contract, which are all the guarantees that can go from the ownership, data quality, and whatever we want to make sure that is a guarantee for data consumer. And it's important to have this data contract concept because the plurality of data in a large enterprise can make data become fluffy at a certain point when multiple players in a company start duplicating, proposing data without any guarantees, and then you want to control and put some governance hat that makes sure that everyone is delivering the right value without overlap and duplication and weak data assets delivered across the company. Then that's the point where you want to put data contract in your data space.
Yeah. Okay. And if we go in more practical terms, which are the crucial parts of a data contract? So what is the typical data contract structure? Which are the traits of a data contract, Antonio?
So first of all, as for every contract, also traditional ones, you need to write that down. So you need some formal language to explicit you expect from data assets, and this should cover a lot of aspects of data. We will start with the obvious one, like technical information. So the structure of the data, which are its columns, types, etc. we can go deeper into defining data quality aspects of those columns or even of the whole data set. So we cover also the data quality space with this. On top of the technical information, let's say, we also need to explicit how data can be consumed. So it's some kind of Apache Iceberg table, or you can consume it from Snowflake table, or whatever is the way in your company that you publish and make data available. You also need some semantic information, so you go into the world of metadata management in some way. So what actually this data means. And finally, last but not least, you have to explicit also SLA. So uptime of your data port or data asset, freshness, how frequently it's updated, and if you missed any update for any technical reason, and so on. These are all the parts that make up the contract, and should be, let's say, made available, published somewhere that's it's accessible from all the consumers, obviously. Otherwise, they do not know what to expect from that data.
Yeah, probably we can also add, if I can, Paolo, we can also add to the data contract any concern related to data evaluation also. So you may also want to introduce a prioritization criteria or criticality of the data product in the company. So the data contract can be really a concentrator of what the requirements for a data asset are.
Yeah, sure. The pricing of data can be included in the contract as well, as final stage probably of the maturity curve in adopting this kind of practice. And you mentioned a bunch of technology. Do you think data contracts are binded to specific technologies, or it's more a practice, a pattern? How do you see it?
Well, I'd say technologies make things easier. Some technologies can make things easier, but definitely data contracts are a practice, and can be declined in patterns. But yeah, first and foremost, they are a practice. Again, some technologies help enforcing them and defining them in an easier way. Like if you're working on a data warehouse, probably the structure of your data is not something you need a data contract to explain it, right? Because a data warehouse, a classic data warehouse, it's a schema on write, so everyone knows the schema before consuming the data. If you are on a classic data lake, then schema on read. So you probably need also that part. It's more important. So yeah, definitely tools help, but it's a practice.
Yeah, as always in data engineering. Good. And maybe, Ugo, can you explain a bit how data contracts fit in the overall picture of data management? What is their role, where you can place them? And also, if we can demystify a bit data contract versus data mesh, output port, because I see there are a lot of doubts about these flavors, so it's important to
I see. There are, you're right. There are many terms that are abused probably when talking about data contracts and data mesh. And I would add also democratization and decentralization. They are all always put together on the same plate, but actually they mean different things and they have different purposes in the data space. Data contract, well, in an increasing complexity of a large enterprise, I will see the need. I mean, there is the need. We see the need also from our customers to decentralize the way people manage data. And let's talk about management rather than governance, because data contracts are also mentioned and always mentioned also when we talk about data governance. But if we see governance like the authority of the company in terms of everyone should follow a procedure to manage data, but data governance never touches data. And then we see this as a data governance practice. Then we managing data means touching data, transforming data, putting data in a data value chain and making them work for a data consumer. But the way a large enterprise can govern such a process is actually very difficult to govern, because there is a lack of automation, there is lack of clarity in terms of ownership, and also there is the copy over serve pattern that actually spread across companies, where different business units having the need for consuming data, they copy data from a business unit to another, moving the responsibility of that data to someone or some unit that is not actually the real owner. So these kind of dynamics make very difficult for a large enterprise to govern data, to make sure that who is delivering data keeps ownership on that data, and everyone can actually manage data, even anyway a central control and governance of that data. Data contract puts a crucial role in this scenario, because they can formalize the way people consume data from each other. If you have a company where business units actually correspond to data domains, this is not obvious and trivial, because organization and domains are not the same things. But in the case, for instance, just to make you an example, the business unit correspond to a data domain, you can control the way they consume to each other, okay, and make sure that the right guarantees are delivered between business units. If your company is have a data domains that are process oriented, so it's not the organization that is establishing domains, but actually are the business processes that are establishing domains, then you can keep control with data contracts how business processes exchange data between each other. So data contracts are artifacts in the end, public artifacts in the company that must be published on a marketplace, on a catalog, or in a place that everyone can access, and they can really be helpful for multiple things. One is democratization. It must not be confused with data contracts or anything. Democratization means making people able to access data at the right level. It's not indiscriminated access to data, but it's access data to the right level. Whenever you have a data contract, you know which is the level people can access to a data asset, and which are the guarantee for those data consumers to access to that data. And you can also empower ownership, because data contracts can be delivered along with the ownership for the data asset. And once those information are public and available to a marketplace, then everyone, as Antonio was saying, everyone knows technical specification, how to access the data contract, okay, to know the meaning of the data contract, the priority of the data asset for the company, and so on. You mentioned also data mesh. Well, data mesh is probably a very good promoter of data contracts because of the pillars that data mesh wants to deliver when implementing this data management paradigm in a large enterprise. Data mesh is a very good promoter because looking at data as product where data as product means that we want to make a data assets very reusable and very composable across data of a company. Then to empower this usability, then we need data contracts, because that means that we have a strict governance on how we deliver data, how we version data, how we consume data, and also composability, because we are empowering interoperability, and interoperability is something that we can actually transfer through data contracts. So it's data mesh starting from data contracts in a data contract centric, I would say, fashion, so that you can establish rules how you can consume data as a product and then build the right data products.
So it seems to me that in the biggest picture of data management, it makes sense to use data contract every time there is an ownership discontinuity, and data mesh, because of this decentralization of ownership, is creating a lot of these boundaries that need to be protected. So that's why data contract is fitting very well in data mesh, because it's creating the opportunity to create such boundaries. And how do you see the relationship with the output part between data contract and output part?
Long story short, an output port is a data contract. There is no doubt in my mind that an output port is a data contract. Is the way we want to consume data from a data product. It must be, again, public, reliable, consistent, versionable, and whatever guarantee we want to provide through a data contract for data consumer is something that matches the output port concept. I would add also a note, Paolo, about data mesh ownership and data contracts. You told something that is very right in my mind. That is a discontinuity of ownership. This means that even if we associate, lakehouse, medallion architecture, data warehouse, data management practice with something that is more centralized, no one prevents to decentralize such data management paradigms through through a good democratization that is based on data contracts. So data contracts are not limited to data mesh. Data mesh is a good promoter, but the practice go beyond the data management paradigm, and you can apply it to any context.
Yeah, also in a centralized paradigm, there are discontinuity in the ownership between the source system and the analytical plane, between the analytical plane and the consumer and the reporting. So there are so many discontinuity also in a centralized environment. Okay.
Yeah, in that case, also helps my last word on this. Also helps identifying domains, because until you adopt a technology-driven domain ownership, data ownership mindset, then you can feel that data in Salesforce are different from data in the data lake, and you want to split ownership between the operational plane and the analytical plane. But in the end, you are talking about customers. While if you actually want to fix ownership and use data contracts to push ownership back to the real data owner, so who knows the data, you can probably adopt a different ownership model, identifying data domains.
Yeah, but that's another layer. Yeah, Antonio, if a company want to start to leverage the power of data contract to go through all the benefits that we mentioned, where is the best the best place to start and the best way to start in introducing data contracts in a complex, a large and complex one?
So as a first step, the place where I would put data contracts is where you have the most friction, and usually that is between the operational systems, operational database or source system, and the analytical plane. That is the first place and the one with most friction. So I would start there. As a, let's say, technical first step, I would try to define the formal language or specification I was mentioning before. So you pick up a specification, you make up your own that fits your purposes, because maybe the standard ones that, let's say, standard is a big word because there is no agreement, but the ones you can find out there in the wild might not cover what you care about. So you need to come up with your definition of what is a data contract. And first step can be create that file or those files that make the contract formal, and it can be as simple as commit them into a repository and make them accessible to everyone and make them public. Then the producer should be responsible for actually implementing some kind of check on his side, so that he's sure that is producing data that fits the contract. And for sure, I would not stop here, but that is the first step. As we go ahead, the best way is to publish contracts in some kind of super partes place, like a data platform. And the next step again is to make the enforcement of these contracts done by the platform itself, so that anyone, producers and consumers, trust the result of the enforcement. Because if you leave to the producer this accountability, the consumer might not trust what the producer is saying. Yeah, the contract is fine, but yeah, the consumer will check it again. So you will double spend, and if the two checks do not agree, you need to go to a super partes anyway to to check that everything is fine.
Yeah.
And
I will come back to the enforcement, but you touched on an important topic. You said committing on Git. So do you think data contracts are some way in the developer life cycle? Are DevOps friendly, or should be DevOps friendly? I see in the market someone claiming to do data contract in the data catalog. How do you see this happening, and why do you think is worthy to have in the developer life cycle this kind of stuff?
Well, I'm pretty biased both by the shift left. So my strong opinion is that data contracts are the starting point of producing data and exposing data. So for sure, they should be in the development life cycle. They might be the first thing when you need to start to work with a customer. Yeah, you talk a bit about what you want to do, but the second step is let's put up a contract so that nothing bad happens. Let's say we know what we expect from each other, and then we start building that up. So yeah, the developers should know what they are developing for, so to fulfill a contract. So for sure, it's something that should be in the developer life cycle, and so it's an artifact. And in your very first implementation, the deliverable is both the contract, the specification, and the code that checks that specification is fulfilled. If you think about it, data contracts are in the data space very similar to OpenAPI specification or Swagger in the endpoint HTTP space. They are a bit more because they add more semantic value, SLAs, etc. But API developers usually start with OpenAPI specification and then go ahead,
So
not the other way around.
So you start by defining the final output contract, and then you work backward in implementing the business logic that is needed to generate the data that will satisfy the contract towards consumer. That's really important aspect to highlight, in my opinion.
I think it's even now that I think about it, it's like doing test-driven development. You define what you expect and then you build it up. So I think it can be, so test-driven development in software development, it's not how you write tests, but it's a tool to help you design your software in a way that is testable. And I would say the same side effect or effect can be achieved with data contracts in the data space. You start from defining what you want.
Okay, so you define the contract, you build the business logic, then you go through CI/CD pipelines to be DevOps friendly and to be integrated in the developer lifecycle. Then I think the contract specification is going to create the infrastructure, and then at that point the data will start to flow because you have your data pipelines and so on. But then at runtime, how do we enforce the contract? Because the contract is there to protect the parties related to technical information, service level agreement, data quality expectations. So runtime enforcement, how can we do it?
Well, it's a complex question because there are many ways to consume data. Therefore, there are many ways to check that data is compliant. As I said, the goal is to have some super partes actor, like a platform, to perform these checks. But anyway, you have many ways, even if the producer itself is controlling itself, let's say. The first pattern is the circuit break pattern. So the data producer produces the data in a, let's say, staging area or area that's not directly accessible to consumers. Then you have some software that we can call data contract guardian, which is software that reads the data contract and is able to perform some action and perform some checks on the staged data. And then only if those checks are successful, the data is actually available for consumer. It's like, you can call it a semaphore, circuit break. It's not a new pattern. It has been there for a while. And the thing with contracts is that it's formal. So everyone knows what to expect, and therefore it can be enforced automatically. That's a first pattern. Then you can have the red flag pattern. So you don't actually stage the data. You just make it publicly available, but there is a check, again, the same check done before, and if the data is not compliant, the consumer will not be able to consume the data anymore. It's like I'm warning you that data is not compliant, so do not go ahead and consume it.
And then the consumer need to decide if they want to ingest anyway the data, even with the warning, or otherwise not.
At least there is awareness around what you're consuming, and also you take the risk as a consumer to spend money and workloads to run, to avoid or want shit in, shit out scenarios.
Yeah. So from this, I think it's important to highlight that, the contract specification and declaration, it could be the first step into a journey, but the declaration itself, just to publish a bunch of metadata, is completely useless if there's no enforcement at deploy time, at runtime. And also, I would add that this enforcement should be managed automatically by the platform to guarantee these third-party enablement for the exchange of value between producer and consumer. And this is exactly what happens in real life. So the contract is always enforced, said by judge or legals, so always enforced by third parties. And so this is super important, and there are also a lot of patterns to do the enforcement. You cannot stick with just one pattern like SQL check or stuff like this, because the reality of the world is far way more complex, especially when you hook into a complex value chain with the complex transformation, need to deliver end-to-end service level agreement. So in the enterprise world, there is a complexity that must be managed with a lot of flexibility, in my opinion. So that's why it's quite hard to implement data contracts at scale properly. What is your experience on this? How easy it is to establish data contracts at a large scale in an organization? Maybe Ugo.
Well, no, I was adding a word to your mention. That is, also there is the misunderstanding. I'll answer your question just a point. It's pretty common to see data catalog as data governance tools, where they are clearly a target system for metadata. Once you have a metadata on the catalog, it's too late to do everything. So you cannot control the quality once you have already done quality. You need a runtime, as Antonio was saying. Data contract guardian, a software agent that is able to control that the declaration is matching the real experience of the users. Well, what to say, which is the impact of data contracts in a large organization. The data contracts has a huge impact in a large organization for many different aspects. First of all, the organization itself. So we will be a little bit, light in thinking that we can implement data contracts as a technical thing into an organization, while actually data contract probably is impacting the organization importantly. let's take back the example of Salesforce data versus data lake data. If you move customers from one to the other, you are not going to convince Salesforce people to implement data contracts if there is not the organization that is readdressing the way data are actually organized around ownership, for instance. So, and also you're not going to convince operational system people to work in a way that they are not used to if you don't create some enablement. So if it's not very easy to use data contracts and data contracts implementation for people that it's not used to. So the impact of data contracts must be, first of all, organizational in my mind. So you must plan for an organization that can use data contracts, that is trained to do it, and understand the value of putting data contract in a company. But also, data engineers, so engineering team. Well, data contract is also an interface. It's like a user interface, let's say, because we are establishing the way that the way people is going to consume data, and if we have a real and good implementation of data contracts, there will no need to call anyone on the mobile and say how this works, how this customer data work. Because you have everything associated to the data contract, every information is available and clear. So the impact is very important in autonomy, in trustworthiness of the mechanism, beyond also the data asset itself. When you have thousands of data assets that you can consume through data contracts, there is a different awareness in the company about what you can consume, how you can consume it. So let's say, I will say that the impact is in terms of data management, because data engineer and data practitioners can actually access and consume data in a way that probably didn't experience before. Another point is organization, and of course the third point would be culture. So the way people perceive the value of using data contracts in a company.
Adoption in general, it's always related to the effort that you require to people in order to adopt something new, and the benefits and the value that they get back from this practice. So for me, it's crucial to make the data contract implementation, the data contract implementation effort for the data producer super low, completely automated in terms of enforcement. They don't need to write the implementation of the Guardian or all this stuff. They just need to declare the contract and it's finished for them. So the effort of adopting it will be super low. And on the other side, we need to highlight the value that they will get back if they implement data contract properly. So not receiving a lot of emails and contract and
in the end, data contracts. Data contracts are asking a data team to respect a certain checklist. You must do data quality. You must do data privacy. You must do data X. And when you start asking many must, you must also enable people to do it very easily. Otherwise, you're going to overwhelm them with multiple tasks that they can know where to start from. And this is the crucial role of the Superpartners platform that Antonio was actually mentioning before. If you have a central governance that is strictly automated around data contracts, okay, it's not a data team concern how to implement all these regulation automated through by yourself, but it's the computational platform, let's say, concern to implement such regulations, and then you must only care about filling in the requirements and implementing the right data for your business case.
Yeah. As Agile Lab, we have been able to implement and scale the data contract practice at very large scale and complex enterprise. So among our customers, what kind of impact did you see? Which benefits they got from the data contract adoption?
Well, is it for me, right? The question, Paolo? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because you follow those customers.
Yeah. It's what is important in such initiatives is that they are data transformation in the end. So you are impacting end-to-end the company, from who produces the data, from who consumes the data, from people that are accountable for the data, but they are not the developers. So you have a huge impact when introducing data contracts to reach goals like decentralization or democratization, as we were saying, or to empower ownership. What's critical in this case is to deliver some minimum valuable product in terms of data platform, for instance, computational platform, for instance. Because otherwise, you can really make a bad impression if you build a castle that is not perceived as functioning very soon. So in your roadmap, when implementing such things in a company, in a large enterprise, you must account for some small iteration in the organization to onboard the practice, find the so-called champion, the pilot project to incept the practice, and also deliver the minimum valuable, let's say, platform that is able to make this game start. Otherwise, it's very difficult for everyone to perceive the value of what you are doing. But actually, when you go into the virtuous circle that people perceive that the easy of implementing through an enabling platform. That's why in Agile Lab we talk about enabling platform, because once people understand how a platform can enable the practice of data contracts, for instance, but this is worth also to mention for data products, of course, then you can keep adding features on top of it, keep adding regulation on top of it. You can start, for instance, to regulate ownership, then you can keep on with data privacy. Then you can add some business logics, right? Like in the utility, you can add unbundling regulation, how you consume data to make sure that trading is not consuming from distribution network and so on. So it's really important to determine the starting point and a clear roadmap for his onboarding the practice to deliver the right expectation to the company. And the first few initial iterations, they are critical to make people understand the practice.
Yeah. But then once the practice is established and scaled, which are the benefits that you have seen for the company?
Well, I would say that once you have a clear mechanism, the enablement path for data teams go through the concept of platform, of course. If the platform is able to give you the ability to compile data contract in a very easy way, so you don't start edit free text on your Git, but you have a user experience and help you fill in the right metadata. If you have a way to deliver data contracts through automation, so you are not delivering yourself data contracts and workload and everything to produce data in the correct way, but there is a platform that is helping you doing this automatically. Once you have a marketplace that can embody, data contracts in a way that are consumable, easily discoverable from data consumer, the benefits is clear, because data teams are lowering. Also, in terms of project economics, you are lowering the capex. People is doing the same things, more things actually, because they can, follow the checklist, do the data quality, do the privacy, and do the rest very easily. And at the same time, who consumers should lower the complaints. And you can also measure that, because once you have automation, you can go into a lean data management mindset. Means that you can measure process to manage data and check successes, check the rates of success that you have. You can put KPIs on top of your practice and measure everything. You can measure the coverage of data quality, the coverage of data privacy, who is actually implementing PII. So automation is the key, and data contracts is a starting point. Probably, Paolo, we can extend this to data product descriptor.
Yeah, absolutely. So a reduction of cognitive load for people, achieving more with less, but also increasing the overall quality of the data, because if every time there is someone publishing the data, if these people are doing it with quality, with service level agreement and so on, this is increasing the quality of the data across the company, saving a lot of time in troubleshooting data issues for the entire company. Good. Last question, then we need to close. What do you see in the future of a data contract, especially related also to platform engineering, but more interested in how do you see this evolving as a trend? Do you see becoming mainstream or a niche thing, or whatever reflection you want to do on this?
Yeah, my reflection is that there is much noise in this moment, and the hype is very high in terms of discussion around data contracts and data products as well. Sorry if I extend usually data contracts to data products, but it's pretty common, this scenario. The hype is very high. The market is experimenting a conversion of data catalogs to tools that wants to embody the concept of data contracts in a way. And probably is a misunderstanding for people that wants to implement data contracts from scratch, and they want to leverage the power of computational governance. For the reason that I was mentioning before, that in the end, the data catalogs are mostly a target system more than a source systems for metadata related to data contract management. And so I believe that the future will be more clear. In the future, will be more clear which is the path. At the moment, I see much confusion around it, and there is a big margin of improvement on what the large enterprises can do with data contracts. Of course, there are thousands of opportunities for the market to introduce some real competition around computational governance, for instance, or also introduce Gen AI to experiment a better implementation of data contracts, standing to the knowledge that you can grab from the company. So there are multiple directions in this moment. Probably there is not a real establishment in terms of tools and products around it in this moment.
Antonio, from a data engineering standpoint, what do you see in the future?
I would try to make a bold prediction and say that in the future, data contracts are going to be something, let's say, standard and in the toolkit of every good data engineer. Let's say, like unit testing and testing in general got in the world of software. Now you wouldn't deliver any software product without a decent amount of tests, at least unit tests. Data contracts are going to be the same for data initiatives. It's something that gives trust and even for yourself that you are developing the product. The gotcha is that they are very different from unit testing, the implementation, but they are very similar in the benefits you get. They can even give more benefits because they are more attached to the semantic and probably can be consumed also by non-technical user. So I guess they are superior in the benefits and they are very different in the implementation, but they are a tool that needs to be widespread, and it's gonna be widespread.
Yeah, I agree. I also see a future with data contract first use case implementation, where basically everything is moving around the data contract definition. And I think this will become a real enabler for the creation of real marketplaces. So twofold marketplaces. So not marketplaces as just a repository of metadata where someone is publishing tables that are already existing, but a marketplace where someone is publishing a product with well-specified contracts, and a consumer is subscribing these contracts, completely decentralizing and completely aligning with the concept of marketplaces in the real world. When we think about Amazon, Airbnb, those are real marketplaces where we have decentralizations, but at the same time we have also governance of transaction. In the platform economy, there is this key term that is the transaction happening between who is offering something and who is demanding that. The platform role is to govern the transaction and provide guarantees regarding transactions. So I see this data contract is the missing piece to enable the creation of a real marketplace. Okay, thanks to our guests for their contribution to this episode. It was very, very insightful. And stay tuned for the next Data Architecture Elevator. If you want, please remember to subscribe the podcast and the channels. This is helping us a lot. And see you the next. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.